The given statement says, due to radioactivity, even a small amount of radiation exposure can have serious biological consequences due to nuclear hazards. Now, nuclear hazards is the subject of the passage, and biological consequences is something that we see connects to most statements around the blanks 2, 3, and 4. But then we have a key phrase in radiation exposure, amount of radiation exposure. That will help us eliminate through the choices. The passage says, nuclear hazards refer to incidents involving the release of significant levels of radioactive materials and exposure of general public or the natural environment to nuclear radiation. The nuclear hazards primarily affect public health due to direct exposure to radioactive material, inhalation of radioactive waste, ingestion of contaminated food, water, etc., and long-term exposure to radioactive materials in the environment that leads to acute or chronic health and environment damage. So we see that the given statement doesn't fit in blank number 1 because here nuclear hazards is the object of the statement. The nuclear hazards primarily affect public health. That is given in the next statement. And we have biological consequences somewhat connecting here, but we are talking about incidents involving the release of significant levels of radioactive material. We see there are significant levels of radioactive materials mentioned here and small amounts of radioactive exposure mentioned here. This suggests that 1 is not a very appropriate choice, an appropriate place for the given statement. Now, we see the aspect of acute and chronic health and environmental damage before blank 2. So we find that this might fit. The radioactive elements emit high energy particles that cause damage to environmental resources. We see that there is the aspect of exposure to radioactive materials, direct exposure to radioactive materials. So there's a repeat of the aspect of radiation exposure, the same thing that we see here in the given statement, in the statement before blank 2. So 2 is a valid choice. We can qualify 2. As we have discussed before, on the aspect of biological consequences, we see that it is mentioned here there's damage to environmental resources. So when environmental resources and biological consequences don't exactly connect, we do have mutations in DNA, burns and radiation sickness, weakness, nausea, hair loss, etc. These might be connected to biological consequences, but as we have seen a keyword connection in, or a key phrase connection in blank 2, where radiation exposure connects to the statement before this, direct exposure to radioactive material and long-term exposure to radioactive material, we see that there is a similar connection between the statements before and after blank 3. We are talking about emission. The radioactive elements emit high energy particles, radiations emitted due to hazards in nuclear facilities. So we see that the aspect of emission connects these two statements directly, which means that we cannot have the given statement in blank 3. That would break the logical flow of statements. And then we have these aspects followed by blank number 4. Again, in blank number 4, we cannot have this because the statement before that has the subject, radiations emitted due to hazards in nuclear facilities. And in the given statement, we have due to radioactivity. So radioactivity being much more general and radiations emitted due to hazards in nuclear facilities being much more specific. If we place the given statement in blank 4, then that would defy the general to specific rule, which means we can eliminate option 4, choice 4 as well. Thus, we get the answer as option 2.